My friend, there comes a moment in every life when you realize that nothing else will truly satisfy you but the love of God. You've tried running. You've tried filling the emptiness with pleasure, success, relationships, money, or even religion without relationship. Yet deep down, that ache remains, the quiet whisper in your heart that says, there must be more. And there is. That more is the love of God, a love so powerful, so transforming, so relentless, that once it touches your heart, nothing in your life will ever be the same again. Are you ready for that kind of change? Are you ready for God's love to step into the ruins of your pain, the brokenness of your past, and the confusion of your present, and rebuild everything from the ground up? Because when the love of God comes, it doesn't just improve you, it recreates you. You see, God's love isn't an idea. It's not some abstract theology or poetic verse. It's a living force, a reality that enters your life and changes the very core of who you are. His love is patient when you are stubborn. His love is merciful when you are guilty. His love is strong when you are weak. His love is constant when everyone else walks away. And the truth is, His love has been pursuing you long before you even thought of Him. There are some listening right now who feel forgotten. You think God has passed you by. Maybe your mistakes are shouting louder than your faith. Maybe your heart has been bruised so many times that you've stopped believing love could ever heal you. But the message of the cross still stands. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. That's not a story from ancient history. That's your story right now. God loved you before you took your first breath. He loved you when you were running in the opposite direction. He loved you when you were lost in your sin, when you were trapped in shame, when you were too afraid to believe that anyone could care for you again. His love didn't stop at your rebellion. It broke through it. Think about that for a moment. The creator of the universe, the one who holds galaxies in His hands, looks at you, not with condemnation, but with compassion. You're not an accident. You're not a burden. You're not too far gone. You are loved deeply, eternally, unconditionally. And when you finally let that truth sink in, everything begins to change. Because the love of God isn't meant to sit quietly on a shelf. It's meant to transform. It takes the hardest heart and makes it tender again. It takes the proud and teaches them humility. It takes the broken and turns them into testimonies of grace. Maybe you've been trying to earn that love as if you could ever deserve it. Maybe you've been carrying the weight of guilt for years, believing that your sins have disqualified you from ever knowing God's goodness. But hear this. God's love isn't based on your performance. It's based on His promise. You can't earn it. You can only receive it. When Jesus stretched His arms on that cross, He was saying to you, this is how much I love you. Every drop of blood that fell to the ground cried out redemption. Every wound declared forgiveness. Every breath He took in pain was a breath of mercy for your soul. That's the love that changes everything. There are many people today who are afraid to surrender to that love because they know it will cost them something. They sense that if they truly give their heart to God, they'll have to let go of the things that keep them in control. And that's true. The love of God will challenge your comfort zones. It will confront your idols. It will break your chains. But it will also set you free in ways you never imagined. Because when God's love fills your heart, sin loses its grip. The things that used to attract you lose their power. You begin to see life through new eyes. You start forgiving where you once held bitterness. You start giving where you once withheld. You start walking in peace where you once walked in fear. There's a kind of strength that only comes when you know you are loved by God. The world may reject you, people may misunderstand you, but the love of God anchors your soul. It tells you that you belong. It whispers in the dark, you are mine. And once you've experienced that, you can never go back to living the same way. Let me tell you something, friend, God's love doesn't just change circumstances, it changes hearts. Maybe you've prayed for your situation to change. Maybe you've begged for your pain to end. But what if God is trying to do something deeper? What if He wants to change you before He changes your situation? Because when His love transforms your heart, you begin to see that the battle you're facing isn't meant to destroy you. It's meant to drive you closer to Him. That heartbreak that shattered you, it was never the end, it was the beginning of your healing. That disappointment that made you question God's goodness. It's about to become the stage for His glory. Sometimes the greatest evidence of God's love isn't that He takes away the storm, but that He gives you peace in the middle of it. You may not understand why certain things happened, but His love will hold you steady through the questions. His love will carry you through the valley. His love will lift you when your own strength is gone. I remember hearing stories of men and women who had lost everything: homes, families, health, hope. And yet they stood with tears in their eyes and joy in their hearts, saying, God is still good. How could they say that? Because they had experienced something greater than the pain. They had encountered the love of God. That's the power of His love. It doesn't depend on what's happening around you. It flows from what's happening inside you. When you open your heart to Him, His love begins to rewrite your story. The mistakes that once defined you become testimonies of grace. The failures that once shamed you become stepping stones of faith. The tears that once broke you become rivers of strength. His love doesn't just patch up the old version of you. It makes you new. If anyone is in Christ, Scripture says there is a new creation. The old has passed away and the new has come. You don't have to live chained to who you used to be. God's love offers you a new beginning today, right now. But the question remains, are you ready? Are you ready to let go of the things that keep you from fully embracing His love? Are you ready to stop running, stop resisting, stop hiding behind excuses? Are you ready to let God love you? Not just the good parts, but the broken parts, the hidden parts, the parts you're ashamed of. Because when you do, something miraculous happens. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead begins to work in your heart. It breaks every stronghold, heals every wound, restores every part of your life that the enemy tried to destroy. You begin to walk differently, talk differently, think differently. You begin to love others the way He loves you. His love becomes your strength, your song, your identity. That's what real transformation looks like. It's not just turning over a new leaf. It's being given a new life. There's a deep hunger in the human soul that nothing in this world can fill except the love of God. You can chase after pleasure, applause, or power, but when the night grows quiet and the lights fade, your heart will still whisper, is there more? And the answer is yes. There is more. There is a love greater than all your fears, stronger than all your failures, higher than all your dreams. A love that never gives up, never runs out, never lets go. That's the love of God. It's the love that meets you in your darkest night and whispers, I'm still here. It's the love that walks beside you when the world turns its back. It's the love that sees your scars and calls you beautiful. It's the love that saw your sin and said, I'll pay the price. No matter where you've been or what you've done, that love is reaching for you right now. Maybe you're listening and you feel unworthy. Maybe your past screams louder than your faith. Maybe you're afraid that if you let God in, He'll see all the mess you've tried to hide. Let me tell you something. He already sees it, and He loves you anyway. His love isn't waiting for you to be perfect. It's waiting for you to say yes. Yes to forgiveness. Yes to healing. Yes to transformation. God's love doesn't demand perfection. It invites surrender. If you're tired of trying to do life on your own, if you're tired of pretending to be strong while your soul is breaking inside, if you're tired of chasing things that never last, then maybe, just maybe, it's time to let the love of God in. When you do, everything changes. The fear that once controlled you begins to fade. The guilt that weighed you down lifts off your shoulders. The loneliness that haunted you is replaced by the presence of the one who promised never to leave you. You'll begin to walk with a peace that doesn't make sense, a joy that doesn't depend on circumstances, and a purpose that gives meaning to every breath you take. That's what happens when God's love takes over. So I ask you again, with all the sincerity in my heart, are you ready for God's love to change everything? Because it will. It will change the way you see yourself. It will change the way you love others. It will change the way you face your battles. It will change the way you live and the way you die. You may have walked in broken, but you can walk out whole. You may have come in empty, but you can leave overflowing. You may have felt unloved, but tonight heaven is whispering your name. The same love that reached across 2,000 years ago is reaching for you now. It's not too late. You haven't gone too far. You're not beyond his reach. All you have to do is open your heart and say, Lord, I'm ready. Change me with your love. And when you do, I promise, you'll never be the same again. God's love is not an idea, but a living power that transforms everything it touches. It is not a philosophy, not a religious concept, not a beautiful phrase written in Scripture merely to inspire you. It is the very heartbeat of God himself moving toward you. His love is alive. It breathes, it reaches, it changes. It breaks through barriers of fear and shame. It touches the untouchable and heals the wounds no human hand can reach. It is not confined to the pages of a book. It's the invisible yet undeniable force that calls your name in the quiet moments when your soul feels empty and lost. When God's love enters your life, it doesn't just decorate your world. It rebuilds it from the foundation up. It doesn't merely polish what's broken. It reshapes what was once ruined into something glorious. From the beginning of creation, this love has been the source of all that is good. When God spoke light into the darkness, that was love moving. When he formed humanity in his image, that was love designing purpose. And when humanity fell into sin and rebellion, that same love refused to give up. It didn't walk away when people chose darkness over light. It pursued them generation after generation. You see, God's love is not passive. It's not sentimental emotion. It's active power. It steps into chaos and brings order. It enters brokenness and brings restoration. It walks into death and brings life. It doesn't just whisper comfort, it commands transformation. You can see the evidence of this love everywhere. When you wake up each morning and breathe in the air you didn't earn, that's love. When you've made mistakes and still find grace waiting for you, that's love. When you've run from God only to discover he never stopped running after you, that's love. It's not the kind of love that fades with time or changes with mood. It's the eternal, unshakable nature of God himself. The world tells you love depends on how lovable you are. But God's love is different. It depends entirely on who he is. That's why it cannot fail. It's not limited by your weakness or destroyed by your sin. It's not dependent on your perfection, but on his promise. Many people think of God's love as gentle and soft, like a warm blanket to make you comfortable. But in truth, his love is powerful. It is the most powerful force in the universe because it changes the human heart. It breaks addictions that years of effort could not. It replaces bitterness with peace. It restores families torn apart by pain. It lifts people from despair into hope. It doesn't just comfort, it transforms. It has the power to make a liar truthful, a hateful person kind, a proud person humble, a broken soul whole. When God's love touches a life, everything changes, values shift, desires are purified, and even the way you see the world becomes different. God's love doesn't wait until you're ready for it. It arrives when you least expect it, sometimes in the darkest moment of your life. Maybe you've been at the end of yourself, no answers, no strength left, no direction to go. And suddenly, a sense of peace begins to rise in your heart, unexplainable, undeserved, undeniable. That's not coincidence. That's the living power of God's love reaching into your despair and breathing life again. It is that same love that whispers hope in hospital rooms, that sits beside the brokenhearted in silence, that finds the sinner hiding in shame and says, "You are still mine." That is not an idea, that is a force greater than any storm. This love doesn't just touch individuals, it transforms families, communities, and nations. History bears witness to what happens when God's love ignites a heart. Lives once wasted in anger are turned toward compassion. People who once lived for themselves begin to serve others. Darkness begins to lose its hold because the light of love cannot be contained. Every great awakening, every movement of grace in the world began not with rules or religion, but with hearts set on fire by the living power of God's love. It is the only power that can soften a hardened heart and awaken a dead soul. There's something extraordinary about how this love works. It doesn't just change your behavior, it changes your nature. It doesn't force obedience, it inspires transformation from within. When you truly encounter God's love, sin begins to lose its taste. The things you once craved no longer satisfy you. The anger you carried begins to melt away. The wounds you thought would never heal start to close because love has entered where nothing else could. His love moves into the deepest, most hidden parts of you, those rooms in your heart where you've kept the pain locked away, and it brings light, Where there was guilt, it brings grace. Where there was fear, it brings courage. Where there was shame, it brings forgiveness. Sometimes we underestimate the strength of divine love because we compare it to human love. Human love can fail. It can change, it can fade, it can walk away. But God's love doesn't shift with circumstances. It doesn't give up when you stumble. It doesn't say, I love you if, or I love you when. It says, I love you, period. Even when you don't love yourself, even when you can't see any worth in your life, God looks at you and sees something beautiful He created. That's why His love changes everything. It restores value to the valueless, hope to the hopeless, and life to the lifeless. God's love isn't confined to words on a page or emotions in a service. It's power in action. It's the reason why the addict finds freedom, why the bitter find forgiveness, why the broken find wholeness. It's why tears can turn into joy, why the past can lose its hold, why the future can suddenly seem bright again. The power of His love is that it doesn't just patch the wounds. It heals the source of the pain. It doesn't just say, I forgive you. It says, I'll give you a new heart. And when that happens, everything changes. Not just what you do, but who you are. If you could see what God's love is doing in the unseen, you would never doubt its power again. It's working in your life right now, even when you don't feel it. It's protecting you from dangers you didn't even see. It's guiding you toward places you don't yet understand. It's shaping you through every trial, teaching you through every delay, and lifting you through every sorrow. Every day, His love is working to transform you into the image of the one who gave everything for you. And though it may not always look like what you expected, His love never stops doing what it was sent to do, make all things new. The world will tell you that power is found in wealth, influence, or control. But real power is found in love, the kind of love that can turn hate into forgiveness, despair into hope, and death into life. That's what God's love does. It reaches deeper than human understanding and works in ways no force of this world ever could. It is strong enough to hold the universe together and gentle enough to hold your heart when it's breaking. It is both the fire that refines and the comfort that restores. It is the voice that calls you out of the darkness and the light that guides you home. Every person who has ever truly encountered God's love can testify to its power. They were lost, and now they are found. They were broken, and now they are whole. They were blind, and now they see. They were bound by guilt and fear, and now they walk in peace and freedom. That is the evidence of living love. It doesn't just make people feel better, it makes them new. The change is so deep, so undeniable, that even those who knew them before can see the difference. That's not self-improvement, that's transformation. So when we say God's love is not an idea, it means it's not something to simply talk about, it's something to experience. It's meant to be lived, felt, and demonstrated. When you allow it to enter your life, you begin to carry it wherever you go. It changes how you see people, how you treat them, how you forgive, how you speak, how you love. It becomes the energy behind every act of kindness, the strength behind every moment of grace. Because when the living power of God's love touches a life, it doesn't just change something, it changes everything. His love pursues you even when you run, fall, or feel unworthy. There is something astonishing about the way God's love never gives up. No matter how far you've gone, no matter how many times you've fallen, His love keeps reaching. You can turn your back on Him, but He never turns His back on you. You can walk away from His presence, but His love will follow you into every valley, every dark alley of sin, every place you thought He would never enter. His love is relentless, not because you deserve it, but because He cannot deny His nature. Love is who He is. He doesn't love you because you've earned it. He loves you because you belong to Him. There are people who have spent their entire lives running from God. They run because they're afraid, ashamed, or wounded. They think if they hide long enough, their past will somehow stay buried and God won't come looking for them. But the truth is, He's already there. You can run to the farthest corner of the earth and His love will still find you. You can bury yourself in success, in pleasure, in distraction, and yet His love will still whisper in the quiet moments of your heart. You may think you've outrun Him, but His love never tires. It doesn't chase with anger, it chases with compassion. It doesn't pursue to punish, it pursues to restore. There's a story told of a shepherd who leaves 99 sheep to find the one that wandered off. That's not foolishness, that's love. That's what God does. He looks at a world filled with brokenness and rebellion, and instead of writing us off, he runs after us. His love doesn't stop because of your sin. It moves toward it to redeem you. When you've fallen into the pit of regret, his love climbs down into that pit and lifts you out. When you've been trapped by your own choices, his love breaks the chains. When you've fallen so low that you can't even lift your eyes, his love kneels beside you and says, "You're still mine." That's the kind of love that doesn't quit. There are moments in life when you think you've gone too far, when you believe that what you've done is beyond forgiveness. You hear the voice of condemnation telling you that you're too broken, too dirty, too unworthy to ever be loved again. But that's not God's voice. That's the voice of guilt trying to drown out grace. God's voice says, "I still want you. I still choose you." When the prodigal son wasted everything, when he came to his senses and walked back home, he expected rejection. But the father didn't wait for explanations or apologies. He ran. That's the picture of divine pursuit. God doesn't wait on the porch with folded arms. He runs down the road with open ones. When you fall, his love doesn't say, "I told you so." It says, "Let me lift you." It doesn't stand at a distance waiting for you to crawl your way back. It steps into your mess and brings you out. The world might turn away when you fail, but God draws nearer. You may think your failure disqualifies you, but to God, it's an opportunity to reveal his mercy. The same love that reached out to Peter after he denied Jesus 3 times is the same love that reaches out to you when you fall. It doesn't erase your past, it redeems it. It turns your scars into stories of grace and your weakness into testimonies of strength. His love doesn't just pursue the perfect, it pursues the broken. Look through Scripture and you'll see it over and over again. It pursued Moses when he was hiding in the desert after murder. It pursued David after adultery and failure. It pursued Jonah in the belly of a fish. It pursued the woman caught in adultery when everyone else wanted to stone her. It pursued Paul, who once persecuted the very faith he would later preach. God's love doesn't wait for people to get it right. It meets them right in the middle of their wrong and turns their story around. When you run, God doesn't chase you with anger. He follows you with mercy. You can ignore his voice. You can drown it out with noise. But you cannot silence his love. It's the quiet tug in your heart that won't go away. It's the unease you feel when you're far from him. It's the strange comfort you sense when you think you should be disqualified. That's not guilt. That's grace calling you home. His love keeps sending reminders through a song, a memory, a person, or a moment that softens your heart. Even in your rebellion, he is planting seeds of return. There are times when you think God's love should have given up on you. You've promised to change and failed again. You've said you'd do better and fell back into the same habits. And yet, you wake up each day with breath in your lungs and grace in your life. That's proof that his love hasn't stopped. You see, human love gets tired. It gives up after too many disappointments. But divine love doesn't measure by performance. It endures through failure. It doesn't wait for you to deserve it. It loves because that's who God is. Even when you feel unworthy, his love still calls you worthy. It doesn't ignore your sin, but it doesn't let sin define you. God's love sees beyond the dirt and the damage. It sees the masterpiece beneath. When you look in the mirror and see all your flaws, God sees his child created in his image, capable of being restored. You may feel like a broken vessel, but he sees a story that can reflect his glory. That's why his love doesn't stop at forgiveness. It continues into transformation. It doesn't just find you where you are, it leads you where you were meant to be. Think of how many times you've run from what you knew was right. You avoided prayer, avoided truth, avoided the call of your own conscience. Yet somehow, you still couldn't escape him. His love met you in the middle of your rebellion, not to shame you, but to save you. When the world would have labeled you unworthy, his love wrote your name in grace. That's the mystery of divine pursuit. It doesn't make sense to human minds because it's not based on logic, it's based on love. Even when you fall again and again, his love still bends down to help you up. The enemy wants you to believe that failure defines you, but God's love says failure refines you. Every time you stumble, his hand is there. Every time you lose your way, his light still shines. Every time you cry out from the depths, his answer is still the same. I'm here. There is no pit too deep, no sin too dark, no distance too far that his love cannot reach. It's not a love that stops at your mistakes. It's a love that transforms them into stepping stones. You may not understand why God loves you when you've done nothing to earn it, but that's the very point. His love is not earned, it's given. It's not the result of your goodness, it's the cause of it. His love comes first. Before you ever prayed, before you ever turned your heart toward him, he had already chosen you. That's why it's called grace. Unmerited, undeserved, unstoppable favor. And when you finally stop running and turn around, you'll find he's been right behind you the whole time. You'll realize that every detour, every fall, every lonely night was never outside his reach. His love was in every moment, waiting patiently, never forcing, always inviting. You may have spent years thinking you were searching for God, but the truth is, he's been the one searching for you. His love has followed you through every failure and stood beside you through every fall, not to condemn you, but to remind you that you were never abandoned. His love pursues not to capture you in judgment, but to rescue you in mercy. You can't earn God's love. It is freely given through grace, not performance. This truth strikes against everything the world teaches you about love and worth. We live in a culture that tells you that love must be earned, that approval must be won, that you must achieve enough, behave enough, perform enough to deserve acceptance. But the love of God shatters that lie. It does not wait for you to measure up. It does not require you to prove yourself. And it does not depend on your ability to be perfect. God's love begins where your effort ends. It meets you in your inability, in your weakness, in your need, and it wraps you in grace that asks for nothing in return but surrender. Grace is what makes divine love so different from human love. Human love often comes with conditions: be good enough, stay faithful enough, look a certain way, act a certain way. But God's love has no preconditions. It does not say, I'll love you if, or I'll love you when. It says, I love you now as you are. That is the scandal of grace. It gives when you don't deserve. It forgives when you don't ask. It restores when you've destroyed. It covers when you're exposed. It's not based on your merit, but on his mercy. It's not dependent on your performance, but on his promise. When you try to earn love, you live in constant fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. But when you realize God's love is freely given, that fear begins to lose its hold. You don't have to strive for what's already yours. You don't have to pretend to be strong when his grace is made perfect in your weakness. You don't have to hide your flaws when his love has already covered them. There's freedom in knowing that nothing you can do will make him love you more, and nothing you can do will make him love you less. Many people spend their lives trying to prove to God that they're good enough to be loved, when the truth is he loved them before they ever did a thing. Before you prayed your first prayer, before you sang your first song, before you took your first breath, he already loved you. Scripture says, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That means his love was extended when you were at your worst, not your best. It means he saw every mistake you would make, every failure you would fall into, every sin you would commit, and still chose to love you. That's not earned love. That's divine grace. Religion without relationship tries to earn what grace gives for free. It tells you to work harder, do more, be better, follow the rules, and maybe, just maybe, God will love you. But grace tells a different story. Grace says, you are already loved, so come. Grace doesn't demand perfection. It offers transformation. It doesn't expect you to climb up to God. It tells you that God came down to you. The cross is the ultimate proof that his love cannot be earned. Jesus didn't die because you were worthy. He died to make you worthy. When you truly understand that love cannot be earned, you begin to live differently. You stop performing for acceptance and start living from acceptance. You stop striving to be loved and start walking in love. You stop trying to prove yourself and start trusting his grace. There's a deep rest that enters your soul when you realize that God's love is not a wage but a gift. You don't have to fear losing it because it was never yours to earn. It was always his to give. There's a story told of a man who spent his life working to impress God. He fasted, prayed, gave money, followed every rule, and yet he always felt distant and empty. One day, exhausted and broken, he cried out, "God, what more do you want from me?" And the whisper of grace came, "I don't want your performance, I want your heart." That's what God desires. He doesn't need your perfection, he wants your surrender. He's not looking for religious achievement, he's looking for relationship. So many people carry the heavy burden of trying to earn love from others, from themselves, even from God. They live in a cycle of striving and shame, feeling like they're never enough. But the gospel was never about what you can do for God. It's about what God has already done for you. Grace means you don't start at zero trying to work your way up to acceptance. You start fully accepted and grow from there. You're not climbing toward love, you're standing in it. God's love doesn't operate on a system of merit. It doesn't keep score of your rights and wrongs. It doesn't check a list to decide if you qualify. His love was settled the moment he sent his Son. That's why grace offends human pride. It leaves no room for boasting. You can't say, "I earned it," or "I deserved it." You can only say, "I received it." And in receiving, your heart changes. Because when you realize you've been freely loved, you begin to freely love others. When you realize you've been forgiven much, you start forgiving much. Grace transforms not by demand, but by revelation. There's a peace that floods your life when you stop trying to perform for God's approval. You stop asking, "Am I doing enough?" and start realizing he's already done enough. The cross is God's eternal declaration that love is finished, complete, irrevocable. You can't add to it, and you can't subtract from it. You can only believe it. When Jesus said, "It is finished," he was saying the striving was over. The price had been paid. The debt had been canceled. Love had won. God's love is so freely given that even when you fail, his grace remains. That doesn't mean he overlooks sin. It means he overcame it. It doesn't mean you have a license to live carelessly. It means you have the power to live freely. Grace doesn't encourage sin. It destroys its power. When you realize how deeply you're loved, sin loses its attraction because love has taken its place. You begin to obey, not because you fear punishment, but because you love the one who first loved you. That's what it means to live under grace. It's not an excuse to do wrong, but the empowerment to do right. Some people fear that if love is free, it will make people lazy or careless. But the opposite is true. When love is truly understood, it ignites devotion, not complacency. The more you realize you didn't earn his love, the more grateful you become. And gratitude produces obedience that no rule could ever force. A heart touched by grace doesn't need to be commanded to worship. It can't help but worship. It doesn't need to be told to serve. It desires to serve. That's the miracle of grace. It changes duty into delight. God's love is not a reward for good behavior. It's the foundation that makes good behavior possible. It's not a response to righteousness, it's the cause of it. You don't clean yourself up to come to him. You come to him, and he cleans you. You don't perform to earn his presence. You surrender and receive his spirit. That's why every truly changed life begins not with striving, but with surrender. There's no mountain of effort high enough to reach his love. No ocean of sin deep enough to hide from it. No wall of failure thick enough to block it. His love doesn't need your perfection. It already covered your imperfection. Grace means he sees you, knows you, and still chooses you. It's not something you can buy, trade, or earn. It's a gift. The most beautiful thing about that gift is that the moment you stop trying to earn it, you finally get to experience it. So stop trying to perform your way into his love. You were never meant to impress him. You were meant to know him. His love isn't a prize to be won. It's a gift to be received. It's not waiting for you to be good enough. It's waiting for you to believe it's already yours. And when that truth finally sinks deep into your heart, you'll stop striving and start living. You'll stop performing and start abiding. Because the love that can't be earned is the love that finally sets you free. God's love changes your heart before it changes your circumstances, because the work God does in the heart is far more powerful and eternal than anything that happens around you. Many people cry out for God to fix their problems, to open doors, to move mountains, or to heal situations, but God often begins by touching the unseen parts of your life, the places no one else can see. The greatest miracle is not when God changes your situation, but when He changes you in the middle of it. Because the truth is, you can have every circumstance go your way and still be empty if your heart is far from Him. But if your heart is full of His love, even the storm becomes a place of peace. God begins His work from the inside out. He takes a heart that has grown cold, bitter, fearful, or angry and fills it with His presence until it beats again with hope. When His love enters your life, it breaks chains that have held you for years, chains of guilt, shame, resentment, or pride. You begin to see yourself and the world differently because your vision becomes purified by grace. When God's love enters your heart, He begins to shift the very foundation of what you value and believe. Suddenly, things that used to matter so much, status, approval, possession, start to lose their power over you. The heart that once lived for recognition begins to live for righteousness. You find peace in surrender, not in control. You find joy in giving, not in gaining. That's the kind of transformation only God's love can bring. It doesn't happen overnight, but little by little, His Spirit reshapes your character, your desires, your words, and your reactions. The people who used to hurt you may not change. The job may not immediately get better. The door you prayed for may stay closed for a season. But your heart begins to rest in the assurance that you are deeply loved and never alone. And when that truth settles in, the way you respond to every trial changes completely. This is why so many people who have walked with God for years can testify that their greatest growth didn't happen in their seasons of success, but in their seasons of pain. Because in the pain, they discovered that God's love was not conditional. He didn't love them because everything was going well. He loved them even when everything was falling apart. When your circumstances don't change, but your heart does, that's when you realize God's love is more than a feeling. It's a force that anchors you when life shakes you. It builds spiritual maturity. It teaches you to trust when you can't trace His hand. It grows patience when your prayers seem unanswered. It produces compassion for others who suffer, because you know what it feels like to be comforted by the love of God yourself. Think about it. How many times have you asked God to remove a burden and instead He gave you strength to carry it? That's love working inside your heart. How many times have you asked for peace and He gave you a deeper faith that led to peace? That's love shaping your spirit. How many times have you begged for a miracle outside you and God performed one inside you, a miracle of forgiveness, humility, or endurance? That's the hidden power of divine love. When God changes your heart first, everything else that changes later is built on something unshakable. Because circumstances can be temporary, but a heart that's been touched by love can never go back to who it used to be. There's something sacred about the process of inner transformation. God often lets the outer storm rage on just long enough for you to discover that His peace was already living inside you. You stop depending on external victories for validation, and you start living from an internal victory that no one can steal. You realize that you don't need everything to go right to be right within yourself. The love of God fills every empty space where fear once lived. It takes away the anxiety of trying to control outcomes and replaces it with trust in His timing. You no longer need to understand everything because you've learned to rest in the one who understands you completely. The world tells you that change comes from outside influences, new jobs, new people, new places, or new possessions. But God's kingdom works in the opposite direction. He begins within. Before He rebuilds your life, He rebuilds your heart. Before He lifts you up, He grounds you in His love. Before He brings breakthrough, He builds faith. That's why sometimes He delays the outer blessing until the inner transformation is complete. Because if He gave you what you wanted without first preparing your heart, the very thing meant to bless you could destroy you. But when your heart has been molded by His love, you are ready to handle His blessings with humility and gratitude, not pride and greed. Every act of God's love in your heart is a preparation for something greater. When He teaches you patience, He's preparing you for promise. When He teaches you forgiveness, He's preparing you for freedom. When He teaches you contentment, He's preparing you for abundance. The change of heart is the seed of every future blessing. That's why it's so important not to despise the process. You might not see outward results yet, but God is doing His deepest work in places that no one sees. The heart is the workshop of transformation, the secret space where divine love crafts a new creation. And when your heart is changed, your perspective shifts. The things that used to offend you no longer control you. The bitterness that used to poison your spirit is replaced with compassion. You start blessing people who once wounded you. You start praying for those who opposed you. You begin to walk in freedom because love has set you free from the need to be right, from the hunger for revenge, from the bondage of fear. The same heart that was once heavy with pain becomes light with purpose. You see your trials not as punishments, but as opportunities for God's love to shine through you. This change in the heart is what leads to real transformation in life. When your heart changes, your words change. Your relationships change. Your choices change. Suddenly, you no longer walk by sight, but by faith. You no longer make decisions based on emotions, but on truth. You start living from a place of peace, not panic, and that shift affects everything around you. Your family, your work, your future. Because when your heart is right with God, He can trust you with greater responsibilities and deeper callings. So many people are praying for external breakthroughs, but what God longs to give first is an internal breakthrough. A new heart that reflects His love. When that happens, even if nothing outside changes, you feel richer, freer, and more alive than ever before. That's the mystery and beauty of divine love. It doesn't just change what you have, it changes who you are. When your heart has been touched by His love, you carry peace into every place of chaos, you bring light into every shadow, and you respond to every challenge with the strength of His Spirit working in you. Because the greatest change of all is not when God moves the mountain in front of you, but when His love moves the mountain inside your heart. When you surrender to His love, old wounds heal and a new life begins. Because surrender is the doorway through which healing flows. So many hearts carry scars that time alone could never mend. Betrayals, losses, regrets, disappointments, and silent pain buried beneath smiles. We try to manage it, hide it, or numb it, but there's only one power that can truly reach that deep place where the pain still breathes: God's love. When you finally stop fighting, stop running, stop trying to fix everything by your own strength, and instead lift your hands in surrender, that's when His love rushes in. You see, surrender isn't defeat, it's divine alignment. It's when you let go of your own limited understanding and open yourself fully to His healing presence. The moment you yield your broken heart to Him, He begins to rebuild what you thought was lost forever. God's love doesn't just patch the surface, it heals from within. There are wounds that no one sees, memories you never talk about, mistakes that haunt you, people who left without saying goodbye. You've told yourself you moved on, but sometimes the ache still whispers in quiet moments. Yet, when you surrender to God, you discover that His love goes deeper than your pain. He reaches into the very core of your being and begins to cleanse the infection of bitterness, guilt, and fear. He takes what was once heavy and breathes new life into it. The same heart that once carried grief begins to beat with gratitude. The same mind that was consumed with anxiety becomes filled with peace. His love becomes the medicine that restores your soul. But to be healed, you must be willing to let Him touch the place that hurts. Many resist surrender because it feels risky to trust again. We've been disappointed by people who promised to care but didn't, so we assume God might disappoint us too. But He is not like anyone you've ever known. His love doesn't abandon, doesn't manipulate, doesn't demand perfection. It invites you to rest, to let go of your burdens, to stop pretending to be strong when you're breaking inside. Surrender is not about losing yourself. It's about finding the truest version of yourself in His presence. When you say, God, I can't carry this anymore, you are not failing. You are finally allowing Him to do what only He can do. When you open your heart to that kind of love, miracles happen quietly. The anger that used to control you begins to fade. The shame that whispered, "You're not enough," begins to lose its power. The loneliness that felt endless begins to lift as His presence fills the emptiness. And soon you find yourself forgiving people who never apologized, letting go of things you used to replay in your mind 100 times. That's how His love works. It doesn't erase your past, but it redeems it. He takes your story, even the painful chapters, and rewrites them with grace. You realize that what the enemy meant to destroy you actually became the place where God's love proved strongest. Old wounds often become sacred scars. reminders not of pain but of healing. A scar means you survived, that what once blood now bears testimony to God's mercy, and every scar tells a story of surrender. Every healed place in your soul becomes a light for someone still walking through the darkness. Because when His love restores you, you begin to radiate that same love outward. You become a vessel of comfort, an instrument of grace. The compassion that flows from a healed heart can touch others in ways words never could. People sense it in your presence. There's something different about you, a peace that can't be shaken, a joy that can't be faked. The new life that begins in surrender is not just a change of habits, it's a transformation of identity. You no longer define yourself by what you've been through, but by who He says you are. You are no longer the one who failed, or the one who was hurt, or the one who was rejected. You are beloved. You are chosen. You are renewed. God's love gives you a new name, a new direction, a new sense of purpose. You wake up not weighed down by yesterday, but lifted by the promise of today. The old mindset of fear gives way to faith. The old cycle of striving gives way to trust. Where there was once confusion, there is now clarity. Where there was once despair, there is now hope. This new life doesn't come through striving or performance. It comes through resting in His grace. You don't have to earn His love. You simply have to receive it. And once you do, you start seeing everything differently. The things that once broke you no longer define your worth. The people who hurt you no longer determine your peace. Even your own failures no longer hold you captive because love has covered them all. The cross becomes not just a symbol of salvation, but a reminder that no wound is too deep for God to heal. Every nail, every tear, every drop of blood was a declaration, my love is greater than your pain. There is something beautiful that happens when you stop trying to hold yourself together and allow God's love to hold you instead. The pressure lifts. The walls come down. You realize you don't have to prove anything to anyone because you are already fully known and fully loved by the one who made you. That realization alone changes everything. It makes you kinder to yourself, gentler toward others, and more patient with the process of becoming who you were meant to be. You begin to live out of peace instead of striving for it. You start to love others not from a place of emptiness but from overflow. God's love not only heals but restores what was lost. It breathes new purpose into wasted years. It resurrects dreams that died in disappointment. It brings divine connections, unexpected opportunities, and new beginnings that remind you He was never finished with you. The same love that raised Christ from the dead now raises you from the ashes of your past. You become a walking testimony that surrender is not the end, but the beginning. You start to live with an awareness that every breath is a gift, every day a chance to reflect His grace. And even when life still brings challenges, the difference is now you face them with a healed heart. You may still have battles, but you fight them from victory, not defeat. You may still encounter pain, but it no longer owns you. Because once His love has touched your soul, you carry peace that circumstances can't take away. The wounds that once made you bitter now make you wise. The valleys that once made you question God now draw you closer to Him. You understand that surrender is not a one-time event. It's a daily posture, a constant choosing to trust His love over your fear, His plan over your control, His timing over your impatience. That's where healing deepens, when every moment becomes an act of surrender. Each time you let go of something that doesn't belong in your heart, His love fills that space with something better. Each time you choose forgiveness over resentment, you heal a little more. Each time you choose faith over doubt, you rise a little higher, until one day you look back and realize the person who once lived in brokenness is gone, and in their place stands someone whole, someone free, someone alive with divine peace. That is what happens when you surrender to His love. Old wounds stop defining you, and a new life full of hope, grace, and purpose begins to unfold. Saying yes to God's love is the moment everything in your life starts to change, because that yes is more than a word. It's an opening of your soul to the greatest force in existence. It's the moment you stop running, stop resisting, and finally allow the one who created you to take His rightful place in your heart. Many people spend their lives searching for meaning, peace, and direction, trying to fill the emptiness with success, relationships, or distractions. But deep down, the heart is crying for something more, something eternal, something pure. That longing is the echo of God's voice calling you home. When you finally say yes, that divine call meets your surrender and your life begins to move from darkness to light, from confusion to clarity, from survival to purpose. That yes may seem small, but in the kingdom of God, small acts of faith open the door to unimaginable transformation. The love of God has been pursuing you long before you ever noticed it. Every near miss, every heartbreak, every strange coincidence that led you back to grace was His love chasing you through the corridors of your own choices. And when you finally say, you realize He was never far from you. He was in the silence when you felt alone. He was in the tears you thought no one saw. He was in the moments when life could have gone so much worse, but somehow you made it through. His love was always there, patiently waiting for your invitation. God never forces His way into a heart. He waits for your permission. The moment you give it, everything begins to shift, not always instantly in the visible world, but deeply, permanently within your spirit, saying yes. To God's love means choosing faith over fear. It means deciding to trust what you can't see more than what you can. It's not about having all the answers. It's about having the courage to surrender your questions. When you open your heart, even with trembling hands, God begins to write new chapters in your story. He takes your past, every mistake, every failure, every regret, and turns it into a platform for His grace. You begin to realize that nothing was wasted, that even the pain had purpose. Your yes becomes the seed that grows into a life you never imagined possible. The peace you used to chase now begins to chase you. The joy that once felt out of reach begins to fill your mornings. The heaviness that sat on your chest begins to lift because love has taken root where fear used to live. That yes is the moment heaven intersects earth in your life. You may not feel fireworks or see visions, but something sacred begins to stir inside you. It's the awakening of your spirit to its true home. You start to sense His presence in everyday moments, in the sunrise, in the kindness of a stranger, in the stillness of prayer. You become more aware that life itself is holy ground, and every breath is a reminder that you are deeply loved. The love of God doesn't make you perfect overnight, but it makes you new. It gives you the strength to face what used to break you. It gives you the grace to forgive what you once swore you never could. It softens your heart where it had grown hard, and it opens your eyes to see beauty where there used to be bitterness. When you say yes to His love, your priorities begin to realign. The things that once defined your worth, status, success, validation start to lose their grip on your soul. You find freedom in simplicity, contentment in gratitude, strength in surrender. You no longer chase approval because you've already been accepted by the one whose opinion matters most. You no longer live to impress people because your life has become an offering to God. You start walking in purpose, not pressure. Every step you take is guided by peace instead of panic. Every decision you make begins with prayer instead of fear. That's how life changes when love takes over. It gives you a new compass, one that always points toward hope. Sometimes saying yes to God's love requires you to let go of things you once held tightly. It might mean releasing a relationship that isn't rooted in truth, a dream that's not aligned with His plan, or a habit that's been holding you back. Surrender often feels like loss at first, but soon you realize that whatever you release, God replaces with something better. His love doesn't take to leave you empty. It takes to make room for abundance. When you say yes, you may walk away from some people or situations, but you also walk into divine peace. You begin to see that obedience is not restriction, it's protection. Every no to something lesser becomes a louder yes to something eternal. As His love begins to fill your heart, it spills into every area of your life. It changes how you treat people. It teaches you to love others even when it's not easy. It gives you compassion for the broken, patience with the difficult, and forgiveness for the undeserving, because you remember that you too were loved when you didn't deserve it. You start to see people not through the lens of judgment, but through the lens of grace. That's the power of divine love. It transforms not only your relationship with God, but also your relationship with the world around you. You become a reflection of His heart, a vessel of His light in a world that desperately needs it. When you say yes, God begins to reveal parts of yourself you never knew existed. He awakens gifts that were dormant, dreams that were buried, and courage you didn't know you had. You realize you were created for more than just existing. You were created to make an impact, to shine, to bring His presence wherever you go. His love ignites a purpose inside you that fear can't extinguish. You start living not out of reaction to your past, but in response to His calling. You discover that your life has meaning beyond your mistakes, and that God's love is strong enough to turn even your pain into purpose. That single yes is the doorway to every other blessing. It's where healing begins, where freedom starts, where faith grows, and where destiny unfolds. The enemy may try to whisper that you're not ready, not worthy, or not strong enough. But love silences those lies. God doesn't ask for perfection. He asks for permission. When you say yes, He does the rest. He gives you the strength you lack, the wisdom you need, and the grace to keep going when life gets heavy. You find yourself walking through things that used to break you, and you realize it's not because you've become stronger, it's because His love is carrying you. Over time, your yes becomes a lifestyle. It's not just something you said once. It's something you live every day. Every morning becomes another opportunity to say, yes, Lord, I trust you today. Every trial becomes another chance to say, yes, Lord. Even here, and with each yes, your faith deepens. Your roots grow stronger. Your heart becomes more aligned with His. You start to notice that even in the hardest seasons, His love never leaves you. It steadies you when everything else shakes. It gives you hope when everything else feels hopeless. It gives you joy that doesn't depend on what's happening, but on who is with you through it all. That's what happens when you say yes to God's love. Everything changes. Not because the world suddenly becomes perfect, but because you do. You are no longer defined by fear, shame, or your past. You are defined by grace. You are no longer living for temporary things. You are living for eternal ones. You walk with peace that surpasses understanding and joy that no one can steal. You start to experience what it means to live fully alive because love has become your foundation, your direction, and your destiny. Saying yes is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of the one God always intended to write through you